Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rise of the Phoenix Coach. I'm Amy, a nurse, a trauma-informed coach, and someone who's walked through the fire, and chose to rise. Before we begin, a quick note that this podcast does include real, unfiltered conversations about trauma, addiction, mental health, and recovery. Some topics may feel intense or triggering. Please listen with care. Take breaks if needed, and always honor where you are in your own journey. This space is not about perfection. It's about truth, it's about healing, and it's about rising again, and sometimes again. If you've ever felt broken, lost, or stuck in survival mode, you're not alone and you're not beyond repair. If you've ever felt broken, lost, or stuck in survival mode, you are not alone, and you're not beyond repair. Here we turn pain into power. We rewrite old stories, and we reclaim the parts of ourselves that we were never meant to lose. This is Rise of the Phoenix Coach. Let's go ahead and begin. And today, I would like to introduce our guest, Sherry Leupold. She is a CEO of Operation Creators, Inc., as a mentor and a leader of Stop Self-Bullying movement. She is also the founder of Wow Warrior Network, publisher of Wow Warrior magazine, and host of the shows Wow Warrior and Wow, Look Who's Here. She has 27 years in network marketing, direct sales, and experience in speaking, mentoring, and team building. She can help you transform your life mentally, physically, and financially through falling in love with yourself first. I love that. Well, welcome, Sherry. Welcome.
Thank
so
you
glad
so
to have
much,
you.
Amy. Oh my gosh, thank you. It's a joy to be here, and I'm excited to share with your audience. And you already know I think you are an amazing woman, so it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. That's so sweet. You're making me blush. I'm a little bit red. I had some family time, and we went to Funplex, which is kind of like a miniature Worlds of Fun and Oceans of Fun in one. And I got a lot of sun the other day. So I may be blushing. I may not. You might not be able to tell.
That's right. It's all good. My daughter was just there as well. And I have been there. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Sherry, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about you.
So gosh, where do I start?
Wherever you're comfortable.
I grew up in a home that my mother suffered domestic violence. It was not ever directed at me, but you have the casualties of war, so to speak, and the innocent bystander kind of thing, and that was myself and my siblings. And interesting how that affects each and every one of us differently, even though we're in the same household, which I know you and I have had this discussion about that, how that works, and how you interpret that. But, my mother was very strong, and I kind of share the story about kind of how the Wow Warrior platform, Wow stands for Woman of Worth. So it's Woman of Worth Warrior, kind of how that has evolved. It was really kind of born out of, if you will, a little bit of a salute to her, if you will. She was a very strong woman. In most areas, that didn't make sense to me that she allowed that, because she was so strong and such a leader in other areas. First entrepreneur I'd ever seen that was close to me. She owned and operated a restaurant successfully. She trained people. She was an incredible leader. So that did not make sense. It took her 17 years to finally walk away from that relationship. And and I understand, actually, as an adult, I think I understand, because he was actually a really wonderful person, but he was an alcoholic. And that he only ever acted like that when he was in a state of drunkenness. So it was a very confusing thing to me as a child, but I do understand, like the parts of him that she loved. So I understand it as with my adult head, as a kid, not so much. But that kind of has shaped a lot of what I do, because one of the things that as an adult looking back, I realized is that she did not have the right kind of women around her. This is my assessment. She had nice ladies, I mean, that were her friends, but they commiserated with her, but they didn't call her on it and say, what are you doing? You're worth more than this. You deserve better than this. They weren't challenging her thinking about staying in a situation that was not healthy for her. And it wasn't healthy for us either. But what I know now is that she was doing the best she could with what she had, with what she knew at the time. And that's my own path of us also of forgiveness and understanding of her situation, that she did the best she could. So that's really one of the things that led to the entire development of the Wow Warrior platform, which is shining a light on women of worth warriors, so that you can see someone actively standing up, standing out as that unrepeatable miracle that each one of us is in real time, and in real life. And she didn't have that. And so that's kind of how the whole platform evolved, is really providing an opportunity for the everyday woman to see everyday woman heroes or sheroes, right? That knew their worth, that were writing their own history, who are living their legacy out loud, exactly as you're doing, Amy. And scars and all, trauma and all, and doing it anyway, and resilient as all get out as a result.
I still need to join this group. And I have it starred and saved in my emails, because I do plan on doing that. Because I absolutely adore you. I love what you're about. You've become a good friend to me. When you were in town, we had lunch, and I absolutely adore and love what you're about. So I do plan on it's in my to-do list. It's very long to-do list, but
that's all right. You know what? You already are a part, because when you make that decision to value your own worth and know your worth, independent of what anyone else says about you, you are that woman of worth. It's not about joining. You are that woman. And, you've written in the magazine, you have provided that snapshot for everyone to see your brilliance and your strength. You have already embraced that, and that's, and I know that your journey is one that you share because you want others to see you can walk through the fire and walk out the other side. Sure, there's going to be some scars, but that's the beauty of you, right? Scars and all, trauma and all. That's what I say. Every woman of worth warrior that I have, and even in the honorees and the awards program that I do, every single one of those women has been through some stuff, is what I like to say, and walked out the other side and said, yep, I'm amazing and an incredible woman and a powerful woman in spite of all that.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. I love that. I just had a conversation with my family just yesterday. And it was when I had a lot of anxiety about, and was very fearful of it. I faced one of my biggest fears yesterday, and that was having the conversation with, but I did it. It was hard as it was. And as much as I didn't want to, I knew it was needed for some more of my own deeper healing, having that conversation with my brother and my sister, who are actually only half. My ex-stepdad is their biological father. And, my mother, and, she reacted exactly how I thought she would, was tried to dismiss a little bit, not really dismiss, but just didn't really want to hear it, rolled her eyes a lot. She's just, and it's okay. I accept her and I still love her, and I'm still going to have my relationship with her. But it's just, I'm able to acknowledge that she did the best she could with what she had and what she knew how.
Yep.
She's come a long way. We have had some therapy sessions together. I just wish we could talk as a family openly and without having to be in that therapy session to do it. And I acknowledge I may not ever be there with her, and that's okay. I still love her to death. It's hard for her. And I know she hasn't done the deeper healing that I have. So that's why she's unable to do that,
Yeah,
but
and I think you have what many women especially have. If they feel any responsibility, there's an avoidant thing, because
mhm,
those are pretty big feelings. And
yeah,
when you have made a choice,
mhm,
I had the same exact kind of experience with my mom when I tried to address it. And
mhm,
one of her friends, the one who I told you was a nice lady, what I was trying to do was bridge the gap with her to say that I understood that she did the best she could with what she had, which I had written her a letter. I was in college, and her friend, because of the way I started the letter, it probably sounded like I was coming at her like an attack. All I was doing is reiterating what my experience was. Um, but that's not what the letter went through. And she called her friend. She brought over a bottle of wine and they burned the letter. That's what she told me. Now, I didn't know this till probably, oh
wow,
gosh, 20 years
that
after,
would have hurt.
5 years after. And I
That
just said
hurts.
to her, you know what? I could have gone a lot of directions with that, but because, like you said, I've done my own healing, and I am more in touch with my own understanding of me and my own emotional intelligence, whatever.
Yeah.
I just said to her, well, Mom, that's really a shame, because if you had read the entire letter, you would have understood that I was telling you that I understood you did the best you could with what you had, with what you knew at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, I'm sorry that you didn't actually read that.
Yeah.
Because
That's
what happened, if
interesting.
that's the actual truth, now I don't know that that's the actual truth,
Yeah.
because if it was, I don't think she would have been as hurt, and wouldn't have been in her feels. But ultimately, when I was talking about that being avoidant, listen, there's times we do things and it hurts other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
sometimes
that
it's
was one
because,
thing I had expressed yesterday was, when this kind of things happen, the abuse, whether you're a victim of the abuse or not, it affects the whole family. And that was one thing I really stressed. And, it was interesting and I was so glad my brother was there and stepped up a little bit because, he had pointed out, Mom's come a long way. And I said, yeah, I 100% acknowledge that. And I still love Mom. And I still I'm here. If I didn't care, I just wouldn't come. I just wouldn't be here. I said, because there was tears the whole conversation. And I said, the reason this is so hard for me is because I love you guys so much more than anybody in the world, you know? And, but yeah, it's just, those conversations are so hard. I said I'm good at boundaries at work. I'm good at boundaries with other friends, other people. I said this is hard for me because of how much I care, because I care what you think, because I love you that much,
right, for
you
sure.
know. And but yeah, my brother, my sister didn't say a whole lot. She really didn't say much. And I know I gave him some reflection questions, and I told him, I said, before we talk about this again, I want you to read these questions and really reflect and really think hard about it. I said, and then we'll come back and if it's tomorrow, if it's in a week, if it's in a month, that's okay. I said,
Yeah.
but I want us to be able to talk. And it is easier, and I do feel closer to my sister than I do my brother as far as being able to do that, but it's easier to do on the phone than it is in person because she lives so far away.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think the other thing is something that when you are looking at someone and you can see pain, that's an uncomfortable feeling. And
and I
so,
think that's why my mom didn't look at me the whole conversation. She kind of rolled her eyes and would look over here and would look over there. She didn't look at me the whole conversation. My sister-in-law, bless her, I love her to death, Melanie. She looked at me the whole time. and she was the first one to give up and give me a big hug and say, I'm proud of you. You're doing awesome.
Mhm.
All the good things that I needed to hear. And so I love her for that. She gets it, you know, we're, I, this is what we need to do to heal the family,
That's right.
and so I'm being the person and doing this, because I want to have that closer. And I told them that. I said, ultimately I'm hoping that my goal is for this to bring us closer.
Oh, and I think that's it's very admirable, Amy, for you to do that. This is very typical of being able to walk the walk, and walk your talk, whatever. Because you're doing it. And when you are coaching other people in this same space, it's because you've literally walked through this fire. And you know what, you could say, and here's the thing, you could say, well, I've done a lot of healing, I'm good. But you're not okay with that's not okay. That's not the end of it for you, because you want the family unit to be healed, to be at a place where everyone is comfortable with each other, saying they're expressing their feelings without hurting the next person and or the other things, right? And I think that is very admirable on your part, because you've come a long way. It's just that you have a grander vision for what the healing looks like, and it's not just you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And while mom might be rolling her eyes, right, the thing is, and some people process differently, she may have to think on that for
She will. She will. Yeah. 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 She will definitely think about it. It was a good long, the talk lasted about a half an hour and stuff. And then, we kind of, it was my sister's last day of being here. She left early this morning, and, and then we went about and we had a dinner, and, and then I said goodbyes, and it was okay. It felt okay, but it was just that dread of doing it, and it was, of course, it was a huge weight off my shoulders.
Mhm.
When we face our fears like that that's strength, that's courage, and it's wonderful how you feel afterwards.
100%. It's like you lost 100 pounds.
Yeah, and I
You
slept like a
carried that.
baby last night. I hadn't had a good night's sleep in over 2 nights, and I feel amazing today because I did the hard work. I did the thing, and then I was able to relax, and I have my peace again. And that thing about the healing is it's a journey. It's not a destination.
Right.
So I don't know that I'll 100% ever be healed and just be perfect and life is just perfect. That's not realistic.
No,
It's
and
healing.
I think I always say there's good days and
Yeah.
sometimes not so good days. And there's days where I might feel some kind of way about something because of something that happened. And the next day I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know why I worried about that or spent time thinking that, like here I'm better now. And that's why I think we always have to, like, I was just sharing with a friend a couple days ago, is like, you never make big decisions when you're in the valley. Like if you are feeling, because I know you and I have talked about a separate issue that felt very valley-ish, and you don't make big decisions when you're
Mhm.
there, because that's where the emotions are overriding the intellect, your thinking capabilities. And so we have to sit with things, and that's a perfect example of why perhaps your mom didn't say a whole lot.
Mhm.
When you are sitting with 3 children who you basically intentionally put into that position, and that's a lot of weight to bear.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of responsibility there, and there has to be some reflection, and
Mhm.
like, how do I process this, that what I thought I was doing, or the best I could, that this still had an impact I never intended.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Um,
My mom at one point, because when I gave him, she's like, I'm not doing homework. Is like, well, Mom, it's not homework. It's some questions for you that I would like you to think about and kind of reflect on before we talk about it again. Like, and take time. But I can relate to you on the letter thing, because when I was in my mid 20s, when I realized and found out about the 3-year-old abuse that I had endured, um, my mom was in a session with me and she walked out. And so that hurt, it felt like she was walking out on me. She couldn't deal with me. And I didn't talk to her for 6 months. And then I ended up being the bigger person and wrote the letter after doing more work in therapy and stuff. And that was, and I wrote the same thing. I understand that you did the best you could. And I forgive you. Like, it's okay. I love you still,
Yep.
and I was still, that after a couple of weeks, was the one who called her, and I understand. I can't imagine the guilt someone might feel from having known that they were part of what caused some of this pain and hurt in somebody,
right. And that's
So,
a lot to bear, because it's not
mhm.
I mean, it's one thing to bear your own, but to know that something that you did caused a grave pain to somebody else is a lot to carry, because you have your own stuff as well. Because clearly, uh, even in your situation, I'm sure things were not like, she wasn't feeling like the cherished wife in that situation
Oh
at all.
no. And that's one thing I brought up too with my brother and sister is, you didn't see the ugliness of him. You didn't see him beat up Mom. You didn't see him beat up me, or the other abuse with me. You didn't see it. You didn't witness it, because basically the boundary I sat with them was, I don't ever want to see him again. I used to pretend, and I wrote an article that I published on Substack on Sunday and it was titled my Declaration of Independence, and it was about, I'm not playing small anymore. I'm not pretending my feelings don't matter. I'm not going to just be okay with things that I'm not okay with. I'm not going to act anymore. I'm taking off my masks,
For sure.
and I read part of that to them, and it felt good. Of course, there were a lot of tears while it was happening, like I said, but it felt freeing to do that. It felt so good to let them know, because I used to try to be okay with seeing him at a niece's birthday party or my brother's event or whatever. But I told him, on 4th of July, and I told them this too, that it felt like I was being punished because, he got there and I left. So I felt like I was being punished because I didn't want to see him. So I'm being punished. I'm being sent away so he can have his time with the family and then go ahead and call me when he's there and I'll come back. And I told them, so I basically set that boundary with them that choose to invite him or me. If you invite him, I'm not coming. And I told him, I said, I don't want this to sound like an ultimatum, because my mom threw that in my face. And I said, I understand that. And that's the last thing I wanted to do, is ever give you any kind of an ultimatum about having a relationship with me or your dad. But I need to protect my emotional and mental safeness, my safety, my peace of mind that I finally have. I'm not okay with seeing him, and I don't have to be.
Right.
I've forgiven him. That does not mean it's okay what he did and that I want to engage.
Right.
And that's basically the point that I came across to them. And because in the past, I would just suck up your feelings, just deal with it.
Right.
Well,
right.
that's what I'm not doing anymore,
Love that. And
So-
you know what? And that's what a strong woman does. She stands up for herself.
Yeah. I never used to do that. Yeah.
And I hope that anyone listening, that gives them hope. Just even if you feel like you can't do that right now, that there is hope that you will build that courage muscle up to speak up for yourself. I mean, that's truly one of the attributes of being a WOW warrior, is understanding that your voice matters and how you feel matters. Whether someone else acknowledges the importance of that is really unimportant. It's that you acknowledge for yourself that your feelings matter, your voice matters, speaking up for yourself matters. You matter above all else to anyone else, first and foremost. And it sounds very selfish, but you have to put your own well-being first in these kinds of situations, because it's very like when they say, if the airplane dips or whatever and the oxygen mask come down, if you're with a kid or an older person, you're supposed to put your mask on first.
Right.
Because if you go down trying to help them, you might never help them, and then you're both gone. Like that's, you have to help yourself first and foremost. And that's what you've done. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you have now pivoted in your healing journey and your point to be able to now want to extend that healing to them.
Yeah. Well, my brother chose to not have a relationship with me until I was over a year clean and sober. And I understand why. I completely understand why. He was angry. He was very angry. I mean, they all kind of knew I was an alcoholic, I think, deep down. Well, they knew I had been in the past. But they had no idea about the drugs. So he was very angry with me. And then also he had dealt with some issues with mom and some family members that I wasn't there for him. And I pointed out to him, you made that decision though, for me to not be there for you during this time. So, sometimes we have to look inward.
Mm-hmm.
We have to look inward at ourselves, to see what is the root cause of this, what is really going on. And that's what I've been doing a lot. And I told him that. I said, these last couple of years, I said, I've been doing a lot. Once I got a treatment, it wasn't like the healing was done.
Right.
I continue to look at myself to see what's really going on with me, and I continually do that on a daily basis. If anything is disturbing my peace, if anything is, has me a little sideways in any way at all, I have to look at, okay, what's going on?
Yep.
So,
for sure.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think also, kind of acknowledging that you, like what I touched on earlier, is that you can have the exact same situation and have three different perspectives, and it's the same scenario. Like if you have three people that witness a car accident, they'll all say something different. The same car accident, they'll all describe it differently based on their personalities, based on how they speak, the language they use. Some will say, oh my gosh, it was terrible. And somebody else will say, oh, it wasn't too bad. And it's the same accident.
Yeah.
Right. It's their own personal emotional response. And then that's what comes into play when you're talking about this. But I think the thing that's important here is that everyone's feelings are valid, whatever they are, even if they don't appear to line up to be like the same, because that's not ever going to happen, because we're all going to have a different interpretation of the same events. That's why your mom partly was rolling her eyes. It's not how she saw it at all.
Yeah, exactly. And, perception can be everything. One of the things that was one of the big things that I worked on a lot, when I was in treatment, was my perception, my mindset, started changing my negative Nelly attitude to more of an attitude of gratitude. So that way I could try and see some positive things out of everything. And that was where I realized that I'm not living my purpose to help other people. I mean, as a nurse, I'm a caregiver, and yes, I'm helping other people, but in the coaching, I feel like my experiences with my own traumas, my own healing, my recovery from addictions, all of that, I'm meant to help other people who have been in, and it doesn't even have to be as traumatic of experience as mine. But anybody who's dealing with anything that is shaking you up, and you're not okay. You're not feeling fulfilled. You're not happy in your life. There is something causing that.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And I think, it's kind of the old saying where we have to meet people where they are,
Mhm.
right? And the great thing about this whole discussion is that we all have the ability, Amy, to do exactly what you have done with your family, is invite someone to their own healing journey. Because we've been on our own, and we have that ability. Like, long story, but one of my brothers is in the hospital right now, and he got mad at my stepmother yesterday. Long story, but anyway, I mean, there was a whole thing, and there was hurt feelings, like I could tell, in all of the directions. And it goes back to what you said: the perception is reality. And I tried to point out gently yesterday that perhaps the other person was thinking this. Well, that's not, I say, no, that's what you thought.
Right.
But you don't know what the other person was thinking unless you ask.
Right.
And everything that I teach, every business that I own, every coaching, mentorship, everything that I teach, I am known for saying, and my team members, my family members, whatever you want to call them, in the businesses that I am, will all quote me constantly. I would say, what do I always say? Questions are the answer. That's what it is. Questions are the answer.
I might steal that from you if you don't mind. Questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Because this is just the thing. You don't know until you ask. You don't. You can think and your perception of what you think they're thinking is actually not their thoughts. It's what you're thinking for them. And so because
future tripping and is what I call it. When you're assuming and you're guessing, you're projecting and all of that. Yeah. And that's what causes a lot of anxiety and panic and things with people is, the unknown. And I'm going to make up a million scenarios in my head of what reality is.
Well, that's why the perception is reality. Well, perception is what you think about a thing, not what you know about a thing.
Right.
The only way you'll know about a thing and have the correct perception is if you've asked the right questions and enough questions.
Right. The powerful questions. I learned a lot about that in my certification.
100%. And this is how people help themselves, right? And this is really what coaching and mentoring is really all about, is if someone's just telling you, quote unquote, what's wrong, then they're not actually helping you, because they're telling you what you're thinking instead of asking you, how did that make you feel? What do you think that means? Those are questions that are really, really important when you're working with someone, anyone in coaching or anything. And even with interviewing, because I love doing interviews as well. And that's the baseline, right? How am I going to know anything if I don't ask enough questions?
Right.
There's never too many questions. I mean, that's just the thing. That's clarifying questions. We're going to ask them all the daily.
Yeah. I asked, and the reflection questions I gave them, it was simply, how do you feel about me? How do you feel about your dad? How do you feel about, what happened to me? And then the big one was, how do you feel about him being around your children? I think I don't know, there was like 4 or 5 questions, but I mean, that was the gist of it. But asking those big, important questions, because I don't want to be around him. And I also told him that, and this is important too, my own peace of mind is, I'm not going to worry about them like I used to worry about them when they were little, going to spend a weekend with him or going to spend a week or 2 with him in the summertime. What's going on? I told him, I said, your children are the age I was when he was molesting me. Olivia has boobs. Is he checking her out? Is he hugging Ava a little too inappropriately? Things like that. I pointed those things out. The things that my family normally would not talk about and just kind of sweep under the rug and hope they don't happen or not talk about it. I brought those up, because, and that's one thing said too, is I'm not just sweeping stuff under the rug anymore. That's not how I live anymore.
Right.
I'm talking about things, the important things that need to be talked about.
Well, and shame only lives in the shade.
Mhm.
And when it's brought to light and when it is talked about, it is those feelings of shame disappear because of the light, I mean, and that is
That's why I talk
that
about my
is
story.
100%. And that is why you share, and that is why it's important. It's why it's important for anyone listening. If you're thinking that stuffing it down and not talking about it or being open about it. Now, I get, like, I didn't do a lot of talking about stuff that I went through with my mom while she was still here. She had dementia at the end, and she didn't pay any attention to anything I was doing, and she was not online or anything, so she really didn't see any of it anyway. But and that was more out of respect for her, because I don't know that she would have understood my perspective, and I wasn't there to make her feel uncomfortable or guilty or anything like that. I mean, anything that I share is really from my perspective, knowing full well that she had her own perspective of what it was, right? Everything that happened, just like your mother was sitting there and she was thinking the entire time you were sharing, she was thinking about what it was for her, what her perception of that was.
Exactly.
And
And with the cycle of abuse within the family and alcoholism and addiction in the family, she didn't portray it as as big of a deal. I know they had a dirty uncle in the family, so even the incest part was kind of like, the way they casually talk about dirty Uncle Frank. Well, why didn't anybody do anything to dirty Uncle Frank? Why was this all just okay? It's not.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also that brings up an interesting point, as they didn't do anything to him. So even if that were the case, well, why would they do anything to the stepdad?
Right.
You just dealt with him. That's just the way it was.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so that like, it kind of paints the picture of, like, whatever your perception is, well, that's just the way it is, kind of thing. You just deal with it. You don't have to
the
do
reality. That's
Yeah.
your own reality. I like how you worded that. That's your own reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's the thing. It's not about whether reality is right or wrong. It's whatever someone's perception is of that is truly what it is.
Mhm.
And that's what they deal with on the daily and what they go through life thinking. And it's kind of their points of reference that they use for normalcy. And you know what? That's everyone's points of normalcy are not the same. It's only what's normal for them. And see, like, that was not that big of a deal. They knew dirty uncle, whatever.
Right.
Like,
And my mom even did make a point at one point. I mean, it almost seemed like she was trying to say to me, I thought we've moved on from this. It was kind of what I was getting from her. Her perception was, and then here again, speculating, but the feelings I got from her was kind of like, I thought we were done with this. Like, why are we still talking about this kind of thing?
yeah,
But yeah, perception is everything. It's your own reality. Yeah.
it is. And but it also does beg the question of, sometimes I do say, what color is the sky in the world you live in?
Yeah.
My sarcastic way of saying, well, your reality might not be actually very accurate.
It's your reality, but it's not a good one.
Right.
Maybe put it that way. It's your reality, but it's not a good one.
But that's just me and my humor. But but actually it's a pertinent saying, though. Like, you know what? That, in my world the sky is blue, and in your world I don't know what color it is based on what you're saying. But some things are, and I don't want to say black and white, but some things they're pretty either right or wrong. Let's just use that word. And
I agree.
Or appropriate or inappropriate. We can use that word as well. And there's really no gray area in some of the things that we're talking about. There's not like a kind of okay and all will just tolerate that. They're just, crimes against children, things like that will
Mhm.
never, there's no variation of that will be appropriate ever.
I think,
There's no level of that or any piece of that's ever going to be, well, like, that's okay. Um, you know, it, it,
yeah,
it's an either or kind of a, a yes,
yeah,
no. Uh,
I
yeah,
agree. I
yeah,
agree 100%. Yeah, I mean, there are some things that are black and white. Most things there's maybe a level of gray, maybe it's a little bit on the darker side, or maybe it's a little bit on the whiter side. But yeah, there are definitely things that
and
should
you
just.
know what? I think you can have black and whites for yourself
Mhm.
also.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so in that particular case, like for you, that it is a very black and white. This was wrong. This is right. And and I think it's okay to say this is wrong for me and this is right for me, and have your own set of, if you want to say, core values and ideals. Um,
Beliefs, yeah.
but what we're talking about is a societal thing, that there is an absolute in this, in a right or wrong. But once again, because our mind always wants to be okay with who we are and
Mhm.
what's going on in our world, we will sway, if you will, or push that perception of what's okay so that we feel okay. We
Mhm.
will accept certain things, like dirty uncle, like, because that's just what is in my world, right? Like, that was her perception, that's just what was, and you didn't put yourself in a position where you might be stuck with him,
Yeah.
like, right?
Well, see,
Like,
I wonder if something didn't happen to my mother because she was best friends and at their house a lot with one of her cousins.
mhm.
So I think it's very high likely that either she, sleepovers even, either she witnessed something or something may have happened to her. It's a high possibility.
It is, and, once again, that thing about shame and being in the dark, like, I can't say anything about that, or, and as well as I do, things a lot of times when they are perpetrated on, especially on children, there are threats and things that are attached to saying anything, and so
Yeah.
there is a level of fear a lot of times that goes with that, and you have no idea. And even at her age, uh, that's still there. If that were the case and that was attached to that,
Yeah.
I can't say anything about that. I'm not going to say anything because she's locked in the mind of, I'm not going to say anything about that.
Yeah. 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 I
It's
agree.
possible. I mean, there's all kinds of things,
Yeah.
but once
It
again,
is.
the truth will set you free.
Mhm. I agree. I love the AA saying I learned years ago, when I did a lot of time in and out of AA in my 30s, that secrets keep you sick. Secrets make
Yeah,
you sick. And
100%.
I wholeheartedly believe that. That was a big part of my problem for a lot of my life, was holding those deep, ugly family secrets in, not
Yeah,
feeling like I was okay to share anything with anybody.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's different when it's just you, but there are other variables here because there are other people involved. And, that is also another layer that comes in here, which I'm sure you run into in your coaching, because, that person is within that coaching space working to overcome their own stuff, but to realize that it's not just them. There are other players involved, so
Yeah.
to speak,
Yeah.
in the game,
Mhm.
and
Right.
a lot of times in that environment, as much as that person wants to change and heal, other people don't want them to do that because then they become different,
Mhm.
and that's
They
uncomfortable.
they may become looked at as different by
Yeah,
other people, is a
true.
fear. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's that goes along with all the collateral damage, because I don't want to call it damage, but I guess that's still the
It
word, because
is.
when you're healing, there is going to be collateral damage for those around you as you
Mhm.
heal. because part of that is going to come with that is going to come from confrontation and communication about things that might be painful. And as you change and evolve, it's going to cause them to look at the situation that they maybe have just been tamping down and stamping down and hoping nobody doesn't come to light, right? And the more you dig up your own backyard.
Yeah. Well, and that was something I had told my mother as well, is there's a lot that went on with my 3-year-old abuse that I don't even know about. I had one aunt and uncle telling me I lived over here with them. The other aunt and uncle telling me I stayed with them when I was taken away from mom for 6 months. So it's like they lied to me. So one of the next conversations I'm going to have is with those 2 aunts that are still alive, and tell them, look, did I even stay with either of you? Because I know I couldn't have stayed with both of you. I want to know the truth. The truth will set you free. I kind of need to know. And I understand why they may have told me that I stayed with them. Maybe it would have eased me a little bit, but that lying to me doesn't help.
Right. Correct.
Because, the different memories, flashbacks, things that come up, it doesn't match up. It doesn't help me. So I need to know the truth.
Right. 100%. And I think, that, and I'm going to point at something generational here is, that if you look back at that time frame, is you didn't talk about things like that kind of stuff. Like that is a big part of that generation is, we don't talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. We don't say that,
Right.
we just do whatever we have to do. And, I have a whole situation in my family where my aunt had a baby, and my grandmother, while she was kind of out of it from having the child, had her sign her child away, but they told her he died. She had no idea. And he reached out to her like 30 years later and said that he needed medical information. And she's like, my child died. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh,
It was but my grandmother was gone at that point. But yeah, there was a lot of subterfuge that went on with that. And yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it was just ridiculous. The whole thing was ridiculous. But you know what? That's what happens when you build on lies. The house never stands.
Yeah.
It implodes and falls in upon itself. And
Yeah.
your hope that you're not in the house and crushed by all of it. But sometimes that's what happens, and you have to crawl out of the rubble.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't ever have that resolution. And I think, to the point of what you do, I think is helping somebody find the breadcrumb trail out of the the crushed house.
Yeah.
Find themselves again, and like what they want to be today and how they want to show up in the world today.
Yeah. And I want to have I don't want to have that complicated grief when my mom passes. I think she's still got a lot of life in her. Yeah. But I don't want that complicated grief. And I know that's what I would have if I just let it be.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, in a way it's kind of selfish. I'm doing it for me, but
I don't think that's
looking after me,
right. I don't think
to look out for myself
at all, because everybody
everybody
that you come in contact with and that you are pouring into and that you are in connection with is affected by that, because everything comes through you. Yeah. So like that's completely understandable that you would do that. And that's the gift that you've just offered your siblings.
Yeah.
Is some healing for themselves as well. Yeah. And sometimes like this is a process of I don't know what I don't know. They may be completely unaware of some of the things that went on.
Yeah. My mom did tell me that she had no idea where I stayed. I know it wasn't with them though. She said if I had stayed with one of them, that she wouldn't have been allowed to go to their house to see them, during the time that she had to make some changes and do some things herself. Which, yeah, I mean, I knew it in my head and in my heart that I didn't stay with either of them, but I wanted to hear someone say it out loud, you know? And she had no idea that I had been lied to about that. She didn't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lot. If you think about that's a
Mhm.
lot to hold.
Yeah.
Because like you're throwing her back 30 years, 40
Mhm.
years in her mind uh of something that she thought was a certain way, and
Um,
yeah, you're sort of ripping the roof off of
right. Ripping the Band-Aid off.
yes, it's like this tightly contained thing.
Yeah.
And going, oh, okay, my perception was incorrect. Like what I thought was not right.
Mhm.
And that's a lot to take in, which is, you know what? Kudos for you for helping, unearth some of that garbage, if you will, because
Yeah.
it's just been dumped on and just sitting there stinking and rotten. And
Yeah.
it wasn't right and it wasn't true. And, once again, the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
Does it not cause any pain? Well, no, it does sometimes cause
Mhm.
pain. And but pain isn't bad. I mean, generally pain is healing.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's alerting you that something's amiss. And
Something's not right within yourself. If you're
right,
experiencing any kind of pain, whether it's physical or emotional, it means something is not settling right with you. And
correct.
in order for healing to happen, you have to allow yourself to feel that. And you
100%.
have to look at what is the cause of it in
Yeah, and
order
you
to
have
be
to
able
go
to let it go.
through it. It's like
Mhm.
it's like when I mean, I think you see it most times with people in grief where they just don't grieve, like the loss of a child or a spouse or a parent, and they don't go through it. They stomp it down and just push all the feelings down and don't actually feel it. And you have to go through it to grow through it. And that's the only true way, if you
Yeah.
will, through it.
Yeah.
And is to feel all the feelings, no matter how big they are, bawl your head off, whatever you have to do, lay in a puddle. I think people think, oh, I shouldn't do that and all that, but like that's the going through it part.
Mhm.
That
Go out in the country and yell and scream if you have to. Throw a temper
100%.
tantrum. If you're 50, 60, 70 years old, you need to go out in the country and throw a temper tantrum because you're worried the neighbors might hear you. Go ahead and do that. That's
Right,
completely
or
okay.
go to one of those places where they let you just beat the crap out of stuff and break.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's whole rooms. I'm like, I guarantee you somebody who's had a lot of trauma is the one who came up with with that idea.
I agree. I
Just go
agree.
bust some stuff up. I'm like, yeah, this is what you do. I mean, because sometimes we just want to like do something really physical. And you know what? The other thing to me is physical movement is going to
Yeah.
always be a stress releaser in any of these kinds of situations. And we've become a very sedentary society, and that makes it a problem. We got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Got to keep
Mhm.
moving.
I
But
love
I
that.
absolutely love the work that you're doing, and I think when people listen, they have to understand that you're truly someone who is, you know, uh, been a pioneer in this kind of a journey, and that you're not shying away from the hard stuff and having the hard conversations, but is able to actually help somebody else start those hard conversations, right? Because you're way on down the road with
Right.
all of your healing. But I
Yeah.
know that the people coming into your sphere, a lot of times they're just putting their toe in the water
Just dipping the toes in. Yeah.
and trying to see if they can do something about
And,
it.
and anybody who wants to can. Anybody who wants to can. Well, Sherry, we are getting close to end of time here. I want to say thank you so much for joining me today and for being a part of this. So I'm going to
Appreciate
go ahead. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close by saying that if something in this episode resonated with you, that's not by accident, and your story isn't over. And no matter where you are right now, you are still capable of rising. If you're ready to go deeper, come join me on Substack at riseofthephoenixcoach.substack.com. And this is where I share more of my story, my tools, and real-time insights. And if you're looking to work together, you can visit my website at riseofthephoenixcoach.com to learn more about Rise of the Phoenix Coach with one-on-one coaching, where we will rebuild confidence, reignite inner strength, and rise up to a life of peace, love, and true happiness. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. That's how this movement grows. One story, one voice, and one rise at a time. Until next time, stay grounded, stay aware, and keep rising.